Vihari Raya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivaratari Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivaratari Gopi Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivaratari Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivaratari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotar Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace Abhai Charana Ravindra Bhaktata Samashwar Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Foundercharya Save the whole world Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astotar Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Sharidas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaurabhakta Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhana Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Braj Bhumi Shri Vrindavanam Ki Navadip Mayapur Dhamma Ki Purusham Chatra Jaganapur Dhamma Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhakti Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi all glories to somebodies, all glories to somebodies, all glories to somebodies, all glories to the feet of Sri Guru and Sri Garanga, all glories to Prabhupada Ki Jai, all Vishnu Padaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrinaru Vacha Porohityaya Bhagavan Porohityaya Bhagavan Porohityaya Bhagavan Vrita Kavya Kila Surai Vrita Kavya Kila Surai Vrita Kavya Kila Surai Porohityaya Bhagavan Vritta Kavya Kilasura Sandamako Suto Tasya Sandamako Suto Tasya Sandamako Suto Tasya Daitya Raja Grihantike Daitya Raja Grihantike Daitya Raja Grihantike Sandarmako Sutotasya Daitya Raja Grihantike Shrinaru Vacha Porohityaya Bhagavan Vrittakavya Kilasurai Sandamako Sutotasya Daitya Raja Grihantike Shinaru Uvacha Porohityaya Bhagavan Vrittakavya Kilasurai Sandamako Sutotasya Daitya Raja Grihantike
Srinarada Uvacha Paurahityaya Bhagavan Vritaha Kavya Kilasurai Shandamarko Sudautasya Daitya Raja Grihantike
Srinarada Vacha Purohityaya Bhagavan Vitakavya Kilasurai Sandamako Sutautasya Raja Grihantike
Rohityaya Bhagavan Vritakavya Kilasure Sandamarko Sutotasya Teja Raja Grihantike
Shri Narada Uvacha. The great Saint Narada said, Porohityaya, to work as a priest. Bhagavan, the most powerful. Vrita, chosen. Kavya, Sukracharya. Kila, indeed. Asurai, by the demons. Sunda Amako, Sunda and Amarka. Sutal, sons. Tasya, of him. Daityaraja, of the king of the demons. Hiranyakashipu. Griha Antike, near the residence. Translation. The great Saint Narada Muni said, the demons, headed by Hiranyakashipu, accepted Shukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. Shukracharya's two sons, Sunda and Amarka, lived near Hiranyakashipu's palace. Responsively, please. The great Saint Narada Muni said, the demons headed by Hiranyakashipu accepted Shukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. Shukracharya's two sons, Sunda and Amarka, lived near Hiranyakashipu's palace. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The beginning of the life story of Prahlad is recounted as follows. Shukracharya became the priest of the atheists, especially Hiranyakashipu, and thus his two sons, Sunda and Amarka, resided near Hiranyakashipu's residence. Shukracharya should not have become the priest of Hiranyakashipu because Hiranyakashipu and his followers were all atheists. A Brahmana should become the priest of a person interested in the advancement of spiritual culture. The very name Shukracharya, however, indicates a person interested in obtaining benefits for his sons and descendants, regardless of how the money comes. A real Brahmana would not become a priest for atheistic men. So, this is the beginning of the story of Prahlad Maharaj. It's quite a powerful story. And this chapter also is quite an important chapter. There are a number of very important verses contained in this chapter, especially we see there's several times in the chapter where Prahlad Maharaj is speaking with his father, and he's talking with his father about how the process of bhakti, or devotional service, is superior to anything else in the material world. Because in the in the Gurukul, he's been taught various materialistic knowledge, such as politics and business and this thing and that thing, and how to manipulate people and get them to do what you want and things like that. You kind of you get people, you put them in lucrative positions so they become loyal to and stuff. So it's very much about political diplomacy and things like that he's being taught. But Prahlad Maharaj is not interested in that at all. He's interested in devotional service because right from the beginning of his life, we see that he was attracted to the process of bhakti. And even while he was in the womb, he was hearing his spiritual master, Narad Muni, instructing his mother. And even though his mother was asleep, he was still hearing the instruction of Narad Muni, and this purified his heart, so much so that he became a pure, unalloyed devotee of Lord Vishnu. And we'll see as this story unfolds, actually, how deep his devotion to Krishna is. That even though the servants of Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him in so many different ways, he was just completely, he didn't try to save himself at any point. He always just took shelter of Krishna. And this is one of the glories we see of Prahlad Maharaj, and also we see how he is recognized, excuse me, as one of the 12 Mahajans. This is, what's it? Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Komara Kapilama Pralado Janako Vishnu Bali Vayasiki Vayam, describing how the different 12 Mahajans. Mahajans are personalities who know the process of bhakti. And not just know it, but they actually live it. They demonstrate it through their practical activities. It's also described in the Mahabharata about the nature of a Mahajan. The Mahajan is that person who devotional service is or the practice of bhakti is within their heart. There's Tako Pratishta Shrutayo Vibhina. And it goes on to Dharmasya Tapam Nihitam Guhayam Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta. Describes how the process of bhakti, this is a secret which is locked within the heart of the Mahajan. And so by this Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta, by following this path which is given by the Mahajans, one can understand the process of devotional service and ultimately come to the point of developing love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we'll see later in this chapter, Hiranyakashipu, he asks Prahlad, he says, what is the best of all the things you've learnt from your teacher? And he's expecting him to give some kind of materialistic knowledge kind of response, about politics or how to exploit or manipulate people and how to control them, whatever. And so Hiranyakashipu is quite dismayed when he responds. He says, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Parasevanam Acharam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmani Vedanam. He's quite, where did you learn this nonsense from? And it's kind of interesting because Hiranyakashipu looks at the Vaishnavas in a similar sense as a Vaishnava would look at a demon. He sees the Vaishnavas as being the scourge of the planet, and they should be eliminated because they're just they have completely wrong ideas. And it's quite prevalent in this day and age at various levels how non-devotees think that those who are following a Vaishnava path are actually parasites and a scourge on society. They're just sucking off society, taking resources that should be given to more productive and useful people. Because what do? They just sit around and chant and sing, and they don't do anything useful. They're not productive. They're not producing any goods or anything that people can use. All they're doing is just reading and sitting around and chanting and thinking, what's the use of that? So you find, I remember it was quite common in Australia when I was a young devotee. We'd go on I was on a travelling party with Ramai Swami, and so we'd travel around the countryside putting on programs each weekend. And during the day we'd be doing Harinam to promote the program. And it was quite a common thing that someone would yell out to you, why don't you get a job, you parasite? Or something like, they're expecting, just think we're lazy people because we're not working like everyone else. But they don't actually, because of their ignorance, they don't actually understand that the activities a Vaishnava is pursuing are the most important activities in society, because they bring people to understand their nature, their actually intrinsic nature, and what their duty is in society. And this is actually the business of devotees or brahmanas, is to educate people as to what is the goal of life. Because we find that in this day and age, most people are confused about what is the goal of life, what is their actual duty. Thank you. And we'll see that it's quite common that if you try to educate people in what is the duty of a living entity, or especially a human being, that they can't accept it. And Prahlad Maharaj points this out. I think in this canto, like each canto has a verse at the beginning, and I think this one, the verse is Komaracha Pragya. It's just like the theme. Oh no, this is a different one. Okay, so I thought they used to have this Komaracha Pragya Dhammam Bhagavatam, Durabam Manasanjama Tarapiya Dhruva Matadam, where Prahlad Maharaj is explaining from the tender age of childhood, from the age of 5 years old, that one should engage in the practice of devotional service. He explains how this human form of life is very, very rare. And you'll see that most people are wasting their human form of life simply in the business of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is what basically, you look around here in Cologne, for instance, and you'll see this is essentially what everyone's doing. There's a very interesting book called Hitopadesh, and it explains this Ahara Nidabaya Maitaron Chasamanya. I keep getting the lines mixed up in this verse, but it's a very interesting verse. It says Damena Hina Pashobi Samana. So Damo hi adiko vishesho Dama Damena Hina Pashobi Samana. That the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are common to both men and animals. But it says like, the special quality of a human form of life is dharma. We're actually meant to pursue dharma. That's what the human form of life is for. Dharma means what is the intrinsic nature of the self. So the dharma of a human being. I have a friend in London. He's a what I would call a dyed-in-the-wool Hindu, and he's always talking about dharma, but he doesn't really understand what it means. He's thinking dharma in the sense of economic development and materialistic activities. But dharma for the living entity means to understand what is your intrinsic nature. And as we see is indicated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says Jivera Surapahoy Krishnana Nityadas. The dharma, the actual the swarup, the proper situation or proper understanding of the form or what you're meant to be doing in this life is to serve Krishna. This is the dharma of every living being. But those who are bewildered by the mode's material nature, they don't understand this. They think that their dharma is more in relation to the modes of nature and being, acting under the influence of the modes of material nature. And as I say, this is the situation of practically every living in this material world. And the problem really comes because there is no one teaching them. Like you look at the materialistic society, essentially they're teaching about how to eat, how to sleep, how to mate, how to defend in a more so-called civilized way. But whether you're sleeping on a fancy bed or you're sleeping on the ground, once you're asleep, it doesn't make any difference to you. You're asleep. If you eat on a gold plate or you eat on an iron plate, what's the difference? You're still eating. So, this whole kind of society is just focusing on this eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but not understanding what is the purpose of life. Not understanding why we have this human form. And because they don't understand the purpose of the human form, because they're misusing it and they're living like animals, it means in their next life, invariably, they will take up that form of life which is suited to their activities, and which is suited to their consciousness. This is described very nicely in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, how yam yam bapismaram babam chajet yante kare varam. Whatever state of being or whatever state of consciousness that person attains when he leaves his body, that state they attain in the next life without fail, according to guna and karma. So we see here how Prabhupada's pointing out in the purport how Sundar and Amaka should not have become the guru or the teachers of things, and neither should Sukracharya have become the guru. But as we see it similarly in the story of Bali Maharaj, how when Bali Maharaj wanted to offer charity to Vamanadev, he tried to stop him from doing it, because he knew that Vamanadev was Vishnu. So it's not like he's completely stupid. He can understand who God is, but because his motive is economic development, therefore his intelligence is misdirected. He actually should be guided, because he's a Brahmana, he should be guiding the Daityas in how to surrender to Vishnu. Then if he did that, he probably wouldn't get a job with the Daityas, because they're not interested in that. So he's misdirected. And we see this as the situation of practically the whole population is they're misdirected because they're misguided by unqualified teachers. And Prahlad, he's trying to teach them. He's trying to teach the sons of the demons, his classmates, what is the goal of life. And it's interesting, we'll see as the chapter evolves, how some of them actually become devotees. They take to the worship of Lord Vishnu. And for Hiranyakashipu, this is the most terrible outcome. How could they become, devotees of my enemy? This person, he's killed my brother. He's my enemy. He wants to destroy him. There's a really interesting section in the teachings of Lord Rishabdev. I think it's Canto 5, Chapter 5. A few verses, I think there's about 4 or 5 verses there. Of the two energies manifest, spirit and dull matter, beings possessing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants, are superior to dull matter, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are the worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to the worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to the animals are human beings, and superior to human beings are ghosts, because they have no material bodies. Superior to ghosts are Gandharvas, and superior to them are Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kinnaras, and superior to them are the Asuras. Superior to the Asuras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Brahma, sons like Daksha, and the supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Brahma, Brahma is considered superior. But Brahma is also subordinate to me, the Supreme Person of Godhead. Because I am inclined to the Brahmanas are the best of all. So he's talking about all these different living entities. He's talking about Rishabdev is talking about the sort of the hierarchy, if you like, within the universe of living entities. And then he's rating even up to the Devatas like Indra, Shiva, etc. And he's saying, but above all of them is the Supreme Person of Godhead, myself, and then above them are the Brahmanas. So Vishnu considers the Brahmanas even superior to himself. And Prabhupada gives quite a nice purport there, and he's explaining how the government should be managed by, or not managed, but directed by Brahmanas, but not Brahmanas like this. Like Sukracharya and his sons who are simply interested in economic development, because they're actually Brahmanas in name only. Because a Brahmana shouldn't work for somebody. If you work and take a wage, then actually technically, according to Vedic culture or the culture of Varnashram, you're a Sudra. Because a Kshatriya won't work for anyone. A Kshatriya will rule and live on taxes. Even we see in the Mahabharata when Duryodhana, when he was running the kingdom, and then in order to avert the war, Krishna went to the court of Hastinapur to try to avert the war. At least externally, that was his intention. His intention was actually to wipe them all out because they were atheistic. But externally, his intention was to try to avert the war. So he approached Dhritarashtra and the elders of the court, and he was actually saying, we should avoid this war. It's going to wipe out the dynasty. The Kurus will be completely destroyed. He was actually telling them the future, how the Kurus will be completely destroyed, and it's not going to bring about happiness for anyone. And he said, we can avert this war if you simply just give the Pandavas 5 villages to rule. Because they're Kshatriyas, they need to rule, they need to tax. That's how they live. They can't live by begging, they can't live by working, they need to rule. And then we know Duryodhana's well-known response was, I won't even give them enough land into which to put the point of a pin. Such a miserly approach, And as a result, we see because of this, then the war ensued, and the Kauravas were completely wiped out. Every one of Dhritarashtra's 100 sons was killed. Bhimsen took great pleasure in killing them all. And so we see this is the nature of a Kshatriya, is they have to rule, they have to have subjects to tax. But not that they're just taxing them, they also have to look after them. And we see in the example of Lord Ramachandra how much love the citizens had for Ramachandra because of the way he cared for them, like they were his children. Well, it wasn't like he was just exploiting them, whereas you see nowadays with the government, They're functioning somewhat in the role of Kshatriyas. And, by and large, the citizens are just there to be taxed. They're just there to provide means to maintain their lifestyle and to maintain their different programs. And by and large, there's not that much investment. They might have various social programs and things like that, but but a lot of that's just to ease their problems. It's not really to bring the citizens to the point of understanding what their duty is. There's none of that coming from the government. Because the government's not directed by educated people, by brahmanas. They're directed by, so often you'll hear the government talking about, but the science says, the science. They're always quoting the scientists. But the scientists are bewildered also. They're the so-called brahmanas of the modern age, but they have no idea of what is the purpose of the human form of life. And this is why this Vedic education, this education that's given by our predecessor acharyas, Srila Prabhupada and all these predecessors, is so important because it's helping us to understand what is the goal of life. What is the duty of every living entity? But in this modern age, it's like no one has any clue what is the duty. And so we see, like with the Kshatriyas, they rule and they care for the citizens. The Vaishyas, they don't work for other people. They make income by trade, by agriculture, by banking, by things like that. And Prabhupada would sometimes say that with a Vaishya, if the market is up or the market is down, it doesn't matter to them. They'll make money somehow or other. There's one story Prabhupada told about a wealthy family in India, and one of the sons of the family had come of age, so he went to his uncle to ask, for what they call a hand up, so some help in business. And at that time, it was the plague in Calcutta, and so he took his nephew to the window and he pointed to a dead rat. He said, "You see this dead rat down here? This is your start. You take this dead rat." And so what was happening? So he did that. What was happening at the time is the city council in Calcutta was giving like a bounty for each dead rat that was handed in, because the dead rats were infected with the plague. And so he did that. He took that rat and he sold it, and then he bought some. I think he bought some pan, and he made up, the things, the tumbul that they hand out, and he sold that. And then from that, he got something else. So gradually he built his business up, and he actually became quite a wealthy businessman from that. So you see how if someone has a Vaishya nature, it doesn't matter, what situation they find themselves in, they're able to make money. And the Brahmana, it's described in different places. There's 12 activities of Brahmanas. Essentially, or we see in the Gita, it talks about the different activities of Brahmanas, the qualities of Brahmana actually. But essentially, a Brahmana, he'll study the scriptures, becomes a pundit, and then because he's knowledgeable in the scriptures, he teaches the scriptures. And when he teaches, he gets donations. Yeah? He does deity worship. And he teaches deity worship. But again, when he teaches, he gets donations. And then he gives in charity, and he takes charity. So this is the role of the Brahmana. And the Sudra, his business is just to serve others, because the Sudra doesn't have the intelligence to know how to behave properly. And this is what we find in this age is there's a lot of Vaishyas in the world, but also there's many Sudras. And mostly we find that, governments, etc., the people who are running the governments are kind of in the category of being Sudras. They're not really what you call Kshatriyas. And therefore, because of the lack of quality, we find that the whole situation is chaotic. No one's got any idea of what needs to be done. I'll just read a few more bits and pieces from this wonderful purport, which are not just purports, but sections here. Yeah, and it's interesting that in this purport, I think it's I'm not sure if it's chapter 5 or chapter 6, but it's verses 21 through to about 26. Prabhupada is in one sense speaking in favor of the democratic system, But he explains that, but they shouldn't be elected by Sudras, they should be elected by Brahmanas. Because a Sudra is just going to elect the person who promises them sense gratification, because that's what they want. They want to satisfy their senses. And it's quite a common thing, like they had an election in Australia last year, earlier this year it was actually. It was I didn't follow it much, but it was quite interesting. In Australia, they have like a two-party system. There's Labor Party, Liberal Party. And the general theme of what both the political parties are presenting is that, we can look after the economy better than the other one. Because when we're looking after the economy, you're going to enjoy, because you'll have more money in your pocket, you'll be able to have a better standard of living, etc., etc. So it's based on sense gratification. But I won't get into the whole thing. It was kind of interesting election. It was like the other party, the one that lost, they suffered the biggest defeat ever of any political party in Australia, because they missed the plot altogether. They just didn't understand what people wanted. But anyway, it was interesting. Then so even if you have a democratic system where governments are elected to power, they should be elected by people who are qualified to make such a decision, not that they're just vox populi. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work if you have people who are unqualified or uninformed. And that's the case in most elections. You'll find that, well, I've always voted for this party. So they can come up with, so I'm going to vote for them again. They can come up with the craziest policies. It doesn't really matter what their policy is. I'll vote for them because I always vote for them. That's an uninformed person. They've got no idea on what the government's meant to be doing. That's why it's important to have a class of Brahmanas. And Srila Prabhupada did say that this ISKCON society is for creating a class of Brahmanas. We need intelligent people in society. Then in the next verse, actually, because Prabhupada also in this purport, he talks about evolution, and it's quite interesting there. And he says, from the evolutionary point of view, perfection is reached when the living entity attains the platform of a Brahmana. A Brahmana is a worshipper of the Supreme Brahman, and the Supreme Brahman worships the Brahmana. So to give you a bit of an understanding of the exalted position of a Brahmana, first off, Prabhupada's identifying who is a Brahmana, the Supreme Brahman, and not the impersonal Brahman, but the personality of Godhead. They worship the Supreme Brahman, but also that person is so exalted, they're so devoted to Krishna, Krishna worships them. There's a nice verse from the Rig Veda, says, Om Tad Vishnu Paramampara Pasanchi Suraya Divi Vichaksharatam Tad Vipraso Vipayanvo Jagri Vagun Samindate Vishnu Yat Paramampadam. That talks about how I don't remember the exact translation, but it talks about how the wise and learned Brahmanas, because of their spiritual knowledge, they can actually see the abode of Vishnu. But not only can they see the abode of Vishnu, they can reveal this abode to others. And this is why it's important, is because the Brahmana, due to their realization, is able to reveal the transcendental reality to people. Not some hodgepodge crazy idea which we see like these modern yogis come up with, all these different crazy ideas, but they're able to actually give the absolute truth. Similar to what Krishna says in the last verse of the fourth chapter of the Gita, Tadvidi paripatena pariprishnena sevya upadekshantite gyananastadashana. This gyananastadashana. Because he's seeing the truth, he can give the truth. If you don't see the truth, how can you give the truth? But so many people are claiming to know what is reality. And they give their version of reality. And what happens is people become confused. Because they're being educated by people who don't know. And only a person who knows should actually become a teacher. Then Rishabh Dev goes on. It's quite nice. O respectful Brahmanas, as far as I am concerned, no one is equal or superior to the Brahmanas in this world. I do not find anyone comparable to them. When people know my motive after performing rituals according to the Vedic principles, they offer food to me with faith and love through the mouth of a Brahmana. When food is thus offered unto me, I eat with full satisfaction. Indeed, I derive more pleasure from food offered in that way than from food offered in the sacrificial fire. So again, Rishabdev is pointing out the exalted position of brahmanas. If you feed a brahmana, and not someone who's just because they've got a Brahman thread doesn't mean they're a brahmana. You'll see there's so many people in India, for instance, wearing Brahman threads. I remember one time catching a rickshaw from the temple in Vrindavan down to Loy Bazaar. And the rickshaw wallah had a Brahman thread on. And we got into a conversation with him, and he was telling us how he's a brahmana. Of course, I didn't try to convince him elsewise, but he's pushing a rickshaw for some small change, basically. Like at that time, I think it was about 5 rupees. Now it's ridiculous, it's incredible how much it costs to go to Loy Bazaar in a rickshaw. But at that time, it was 5 rupees, and so he's working so hard, and you can see that when they get going, the sweat's just dripping. That's not a brahmana. A brahmana doesn't take pleasure in sweating, or pushing a rickshaw to get money. That's a Sudra. A Sudra is satisfied when there's sweat coming from his brow. A Vaishya is satisfied when he's making money, good profit from a transaction. A Kshatriya is satisfied when he's in battle and there's blood drawn. He can see his own blood. He gets really, enthused. It's like you can read stories in the Mahabharata about Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev was an extraordinary personality. There's incomparable, actually, his prowess in battle. And at one point, he was fighting with Arjuna, and Arjuna was shooting arrows at him. Right? And these arrows are shot with such force, they're going straight through Bhishmadev's body and disappearing into the earth. And Bhishmadev it wasn't like swooning or anything. He's like, wow, he's getting fired up because of this, the way that Arjuna is fighting. He's enjoying the fight. So you see that each person, each varna has its nature. And a brahmana is satisfied when he's worshipping Vishnu. He's satisfied when he's studying the scriptures. This is where he gets his taste. And when he's sharing the knowledge of Krishna with others, this is where the brahmana gets his taste. So we see, in this day and age, that people who are taking on the role of brahmanas, they're not brahmanas at all. And this is why, we study the scriptures, we can understand very clearly what is the nature of a brahmana. So and the Lord's saying here that when the brahmanas are fed, because the brahmanas are so dear to him, then he becomes satisfied. Then the next verse is also quite nice. The Vedas are my internal transcendental sound incarnation. Therefore, Jai Shri all the time. The Vedas are Shabda Brahma. In this world, the Brahmanas thoroughly study the Vedas, and because they assimilate the Vedic conclusions, they are also to be considered the Vedas personified. So this is, it's just because someone's got a Brahman thread, it doesn't mean they're a Brahmana. And Srila Prabhupada sometimes will talk about this, how we undergo a process which is called Brahman initiation. It doesn't mean we've become a Brahmana. It means we've begun the process, because initiate means to begin. So it means we've begun the process of becoming a Brahmana. And it means, one of the purposes, or one of the functions of being a Brahmana is to study the scriptures. And not just study, but to actually assimilate this knowledge. And if we look, for instance, in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, how the sages at Naimisharanya, they were glorifying Sutta Goswami because he'd studied so many different branches of knowledge, he'd taken shelter of so many different learned Vedantas and different gurus, and he'd assimilated this knowledge, he'd assimilated the teachings. And Prabhupada, there's an interesting purport, I think it's 115, where Srila Prabhupada talks about how to assimilate knowledge. And he talks about, when we hear someone speaking, then we should ask questions. But the questions should not be challenging or presented in a way to screw out some different meaning. Understand the topic. So Prabhupada explains throughout his teachings how to develop the understanding of this knowledge and how to apply the knowledge. And so by applying the knowledge in our life, it goes from the point of being gyan to vigyan. Because gyan means knowledge, especially transcendental knowledge. Vigyan actually means realized knowledge. And you can understand you've realized the knowledge because you actually apply it in your life. This is very, very important. So, Rishabh's Dave saying here that the Brahmanas are considered to be the Vedas personified. The Brahmanas are situated in the supreme transcendental mode of nature, Sattva Gun. Because of this, they are fixed in mind control, Sama, sense control, Dhamma, and truthfulness, Satya. They describe the Vedas in their original sense. And this is a really important point also, because you see with Srila Prabhupada, when he presented his Bhagavad Gita, what did he call it? Bhagavad Gita as it is, not as it was. Because you look at all these different, like Prabhupada, he said sometimes that, that there's over 700 versions of Bhagavad Gita available now, and not one pure devotee has been produced. But I present my version of Bhagavad Gita, and so many pure devotees. So because they've twisted the meanings of what Krishna is saying, and even like in some versions of Bhagavad Gita, they've tried to eliminate Krishna altogether, and present it as coming from themselves, the authors. So, this is an important point, is to understand the scriptures in their original sense, and then out of mercy, anugraha, they preach the purpose of the Vedas to all conditioned souls. This is the business of a Brahmana, is to preach Krishna consciousness to everyone. They practice penance, tapasya, and tolerance, titiksha. Such a hard quality, isn't it? In this day and age, titiksha, tolerance. And they realize the position of the living entity and the Supreme Lord, Anubhava. These are the 8 qualifications of the Brahmanas. Therefore, among all living entities, no one is superior to the Brahmanas. So it's just a few really interesting, there's a few more verses there, we're not going to read them because it'll go on for a while, but just to give you an understanding of the importance of developing Brahminical consciousness. And even though there's all these different qualities here, Prabhupada in his teachings, he mentioned that in Kali Yuga, there's only 2 really prominent qualities of Brahmanas. Anyone know what they are? In this age, in Kali Yuga, 2 prominent qualities. Yeah, that are prominent in this age. Truthfulness. What? Huh? Cleanliness. Yeah. Ajivam and Socham. Yeah, very, very important. But we see it's very, very lacking in this day and age. People are so unclean. Even within our ISKCON society, we'll see that cleanliness is largely lacking. And I'm not going to go into it too much, but on our YouTube channel, ISKCON Deity Worship Ministries YouTube channel, we have a series of lectures from Hari Prabhu. It's actually 3 lectures. And he's talking about his experiences with Srila Prabhupada and how clean Srila Prabhupada was. Srila Prabhupada was extraordinarily clean. And he wanted us all to follow his example, because Prabhupada was an acharya. An acharya means he teaches by example. So he's setting this example, obviously because it's the way he prefers to live, but also for our benefit, so that we can understand how we should live also. And so we see how Prabhupada set it as such a wonderful example for us all to follow. And, in this particular point about the example of cleanliness is very, very important for us to understand that and take up these practices. Okay, and any comments or questions at all? Yes, bro.
One question regarding this hierarchy. It was said that Brahma is above Shiva, but I was always thinking that Shiva, because Shiva has so many temples, and like Shiva is like, in one sense, on spiritual, it's like higher as Brahma. I mean, he is a son of Brahma, but in one sense, also Shiva is like
Yeah.
great Vaishnava.
I guess in a sense they're different. You know, Brahma's Shiva's father, so naturally he's going to see him as being superior. But then we see with the pastime of the Daksha Yajna how Daksha also had this same perception that I'm superior to Shiva. But that was based on bodily identification, because Shiva is a great transcendentalist, so naturally he's superior to Daksha. But Daksha didn't see it like that. He's just thinking because of bodily connection that I was superior. Brahma's a bit of a different case. Brahma is, especially the Brahma of this universe, this current Brahma, is a great transcendentalist. And in some places I've read where Srila Prabhupada says he's almost on the same level as Krishna. He's such an advanced personality. He's almost on the same level as Krishna. So, yeah, it's in some ways difficult to say that one's more advanced than the other, but because of his position as his father, then in that way it's described here as being superior. And this is Rishabh Davis giving this description. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so you can say it like that.
Thank you very much for the lecture. I have maybe a stupid question, so it's about book distribution. In his book, Tägliche, all glories to Sankirtan devotees, he's writing that book distributors are really righteous and Shudras. Yeah, so practically when we are doing this, you said we should preach Srila Prabhupada also distribute my books. So, but we are preaching and almost, well, we are distributing books and then almost the same all the time. So what about our development then? How we can be second initiated or it doesn't, yes, to come to the level of real Brahman, of the cult of the level of Brahman. So, yes, that's a question.
Yeah, the thing is, by one of the important things for devotees, I mean, apart from our regular sadhana, chanting japa, attending morning programs, things like that, following regular principles, is to study Prabhupada's books. Yeah, but not just to read the books, but to apply the books. To be introspective, read the books and think, okay, how is this relevant to me now in my life? How can I apply this in my life? Okay, we're talking here about, it's talking here about Sundaramaka and Shukracharya. Am I being like that? Am I pursuing my devotional service for the point of some economic gain? Try to be a little bit, introspection is a really important part of the process of bhakti. To look at how I'm practicing bhakti. And to look at how I view different things. Just like, when I was traveling here yesterday, it was kind of, on the trains, it was really interesting. It was just like the different types of people that were coming onto the trains and just, watching them sort of going about their daily life was quite interesting. And then to see the unfortunate situation they're in, but then also trying to look at myself and how I was processing what I was seeing and what I was thinking about them. Because it was talking about this point about anugraha, about this compassion upon living entities. Do I feel compassion or just do I look down on them? So we need to be introspective. We need to try to cultivate this higher consciousness. I mean, to some extent, it comes automatically by the process of bhakti because the heart becomes purified. And as the heart becomes purified, the anarthas are dissipating. Because the anarthas we have, and also our different upadhis, they create impressions upon the consciousness, which is just like when you put a filter over light. Like if we put a pink filter over this light, everything in the room would have a pink hue because of the filter. So it's the same with us, when we have these filters, which are essentially various combinations of the modes of nature, then we view things in a particular way. Just like you look at a dog, a dog has a particular type of filter according to the modes of nature, and it views things in a particular way. It doesn't see a lamppost as something that gives illumination at night. They see a lamppost as a place to pass urine, so because of the filters. So the idea is through the process of bhakti that these filters are gradually dissipate. And the more vigorously, the more effectively we apply ourselves to the process of bhakti, the more quickly these filters dissipate. And then the natural self becomes revealed. And the natural self, as I was saying before, Jivera Surupahoy Krishnena Nityadas. We are all ultimately servants of Krishna. And by the process of bhakti, we destroy these anarthas and we reveal our actual state. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
No, maybe not fully. Not fully.
You can try to speak a little.
Srila Prabhupada said also often he calls Dharma like a characteristics.
Dharma like a what?
Characteristic.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I mean. We are doing practical job.
Yeah.
Maybe we are not sitting, we are trying to read certainly, but maybe we are sitting not so many hours reading the scriptures and learning also as well. But it is somehow this Brahmanical characteristic or sample is a bit limited. What I understand, what I can say, because certainly we open our heart, certainly we are preaching, certainly we are trying to find the word, certainly we are compassionate, certainly if you are doing it for many years, it's getting to be just more or less habitual.
Right.
Yes. And the remaining, what you say, the brahmanas, they are learning, they are preaching. That is the other way of preaching. So I don't know who I am because I'm distributing, I'm traveling, I'm trying to read, I'm trying to do the other services, but I don't know how to know.
Sorry?
How to know, how to understand it. To open the heart, to go the way of bhakti, not to mix it with. Yes, but I mean, so practically. So, how a book distributor is he a Brahman or she? How to be a Brahman distributing book. So this, how to combine this. See, you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of get your point. As far as like identifying ourselves as a Brahman or a Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, I don't think that's really the point. I think the point is to be a devotee of Krishna and try to cultivate Brahminical qualities. Yeah? Prabhupada often would equate a Brahmana with devotee. He'd often equate them as being the same thing. Because a Brahmana is, as we saw in those purports, Prabhupada is saying a Brahmana serves Brahman. He's a devotee of Krishna. That's the first and foremost thing, is he's a devotee of Krishna. It's the same for us. First and foremost, we need to be devotees of Krishna. Everything we do, we try to come to this point of doing it for the pleasure of Krishna. Krishna says, Yat karoshi, yarasnasi, yadjohosya, yatapashyasi kunta, tad karusha maraparam. And then he goes on 2 verses later, Suba suba vareva eva moksha kamabana, sanyaso vimukto mam paisase. He says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever ceremonies you perform, you do that as son of Kunti as an offering for me. And he goes to say, with your mind fixed on me, within this principle of renunciation, you'll be liberated and thus you'll come to me. So the idea is we give up all these external activities and the sense of trying to enjoy these external activities and offer them for the pleasure of Krishna, or do them for the pleasure of Krishna. So you're going out and doing book distribution. Why do you do that? Do you do that because you want to become famous as the best book distributor in Germany or wherever it is you do your books? Or you do it to try to give transcendental knowledge to others? So you look at your motive. What's your motive there? Yeah? And that's where I find introspection is important, because introspection, you can, if we don't reflect on our activities, as you point out, the tendency can be there to become somewhat robotic and just go ahead and do it every day. And I've seen sometimes devotees, they get bored with the process. Oh, it's the same thing every day. No, but just analyze it, like analyze how am I engaging with the process? Is it uplifting for me? Is it nurturing me? Or is there some issue with my consciousness or my attitude towards this, which is blocking me from making further advancement? We have to, analyze things, and as I was mentioning, by reading, we deepen our understanding of how to engage with the process of devotional service. Also, we can, there's books like, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Madhurya Kadambini. In this book, it helps us to analyze the stage of advancement in devotional service so we get some idea where we're at. So the acharyas, they do talk about this. Prabhupada talks about it, also our previous acharyas talk about this, how to understand where I am in the process of bhakti. But it requires introspection. When you read these things, you look at it, and, okay, how is this relevant to me? How does this apply to me? How can I, deepen my understanding of the process of bhakti through this? And I do feel we need to be constantly doing that. We just spent 4 days in Goloka Dham, and Sachinandan Maharaj was giving 3 classes, I think. And that's one of the things I was appreciating from his classes. He's a very deep, thoughtful person, and he's constantly analyzing his application to the process of bhakti, and constantly looking at how he's progressing in spiritual life. And I think this is a good example for devotees to follow, is to look at how he's applying himself to the practice of bhakti, and not just robotically, going through it every day, but look at yourself and see, is my heart becoming purified? And if it's not, why not? Because the process works. There's no doubt of that. The process does work. Krishna says that, in the Gita. He says, many persons in the past became purified by this knowledge of me. So it definitely works. You can look at all of ourselves, where we were the day we walked into the door and where we are now. It should be very different. And I think in most cases we'll find it probably is. If it's not, then we need to look at, okay, if we're serious about making spiritual advancement, that is, we need to look at, okay, what's blocking me? What is it that I'm doing, or what mentality am I maintaining that's blocking me from progressing? I mean, sometimes it's helpful when others give us this type of input, but I think it's more effective if it comes from the self. When we have realizations about these things, we're more inclined to do something about it. But if it's just someone else telling us, it probably depends on who's telling us, but it's like, I've had so many experiences, especially when I was a young devotee, where devotees would get on your case about something, and it just made you feel kind of bad. You didn't feel inspired to progress in devotional service. I mean, sometimes you have experiences where you feel inspired. Sometimes you have experiences where you feel uninspired. There's actually a letter Prabhupada wrote to Himavati, and he made some dresses for Prabhupada's deities. And the way Prabhupada wrote to her was probably the most inspiring letter a disciple could ever receive. I mean, she, after getting such a letter, she'd be willing to do anything for Prabhupada. So we can see that, if we if we're in the position of giving feedback to a person, we should try to give feedback in such a way that they're encouraged, not discouraged. But I'm sure all of us have had the experience of receiving feedback where we become very discouraged. So, yeah, just a few reflections on it. Thank you. Yes, I'm not a scientist.
This Mahabharata, because
Okay.
this verse deals with the officiating priest. As you belong to the deity department, and things like that. There's one section which I was wondering when I read it. They said that Pandavas, they are, after the house is burned and they escaped, they're traveling. And they're going along, I think the bank of the Ganges, one river is there. It's an evening light.
They came across
Sorry?
that Gandharva.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gandharva, his name is Angara Parana. It's a very funny name because it means like wings like hot coals. Hot. That's what the translation means. But he says one thing. He says he wants to block them. You cannot take bath because this time is meant for the Gandharvas and not for humans. So Arjun doesn't buy that. So he's standing there with a bow, ready to attack. Arjun defeats him. And then he becomes befriended with him because Arjun has the Agneya Astra. Then he says that.
Didn't he defeat them with a torch? He had like a burning torch thing. I thought he defeated him with a torch.
Well, I read in the Gita presentation from the Sanskrit Hindi translation. That's he was standing with a bow. Arjun had his weapon from Dronacharya in Gurukul, by which he defeated. I think maybe I'm not remembering exactly how he got his weapon. Could also be from Agni when he served him to burn the Khanva forest. But whatever the point is here, this Gandharva, then he tells them, I would have not attacked you, Pandavas, if you would have had your Purohit, your priest with you. I said, what do you mean? He said that you're walking in the forest here, and I dare to attack you because you don't have a priest. If you would have the priest, then you are actually invincible because he takes everything upon him to protect and everything like that. So I was wondering, to what extent does it mean a priest or a guru is protecting his disciple?
Through knowledge.
Only knowledge.
Primarily, yeah. Especially with the Kshatriyas, because the Kshatriyas are guided by the Brahmanas with transcendental knowledge. Because one of the things we see, like with modern day rulers, they're so attached to their positions, they don't want to give up their positions. And we see, like even in some places, they'll stay in the position until they're killed or they die, because they're so attached to the position. But you'll see it with the Kshatriyas, who are guided by the Brahmanas, and that's one of the things we see with Yudhisthira and personalities like that, so dedicated to the Brahmanas. Whatever the Brahmanas told them, they would do. So the Brahmana ultimately is guiding the disciple to spiritual knowledge, to renunciation. And you'll see that it's quite common throughout the Mahabharata, throughout the Bhagavatam, how the Brahmanas ultimately would give up the king, Bharat Maharaj, give up the kingdom and go to the forest. But Bharat Maharaj, Prabhupada describes, is because he didn't follow his guru properly. That's why he wound up in that problem as a deer, because he wasn't receiving spiritual knowledge. So yeah, the point was because they didn't have a spiritual guide.
That's the side of renunciation. Finally, the Pandavas take Dhaumya as their priest, and he's described to be as a great rishi with great ascetic power. So I was thinking, what does this ascetic power relate to Kshatriyas? Is it like you get some extra power or extra protection, or?
No, as far as I understand it, it's related to transcendental knowledge, because they need that guide. Because the Brahmana is devoted to studying the scriptures. The Brahmana, as I was reading there, he assimilates the knowledge of the scriptures, and then he gives that to others. That's their real prowess. I mean, yes, they get power because of the tapasyas and stuff like that. But you'll see, like even when who was it, Vishwamitra came to Ayodhya and asked Dasarath for Ram. He had the potency, to come and kill those demons. He had the potency himself to kill the demons because of his mystic, but he didn't. He had Ram come and do it, because the Brahmanas generally don't use that power, except sometimes, like when they killed Vena. They killed him. But generally they won't. If there's Kshatriyas there who have the power, they'll engage the Kshatriyas. But if there's no Kshatriyas, like with Vena, because he was the most powerful, then they killed him. But yeah, generally they won't use that power.
I would like to connect it to ISKCON, that there is a complaint that Guru should do everything. Disciples should be protected from fall down or even difficulties following principles. It's all dependent on the Guru. This is one idea. I think
Okay. Load of rubbish. Load of rubbish. Guru is meant to direct you in spiritual life, not meant to get involved in your personal life. That's your business. You know, I remember when I was traveling in India Maharaj years ago, and he would have me sit in on the darshans. And some of the things that the disciples would come and ask the Guru, go ask a life counselor or someone else, you know, go ask a banker or whatever, you know. You're asking Guru how to fix your plumbing. You know, it's nothing to do with him. His business is the Tadvidi Pradipada is Ganinas Tattvadarshana. He has transcendental knowledge, he gives you transcendental knowledge. That's the business of Guru, is to teach you, to guide you how to surrender to Krishna. You look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Gurvastika, yeah? And what's he talking about there? He's showing the disciple how to surrender to Krishna, not how to fix their material problems. Like, I mean, and when gurus get involved in these things, which sometimes they do, they're creating a nightmare for themselves. You know, it's like, I've met devotees over the years where like, you know, the gurus get involved in their marriages, and then the marriage goes wrong. And they go and ask the guru to solve the problem. The guru doesn't solve the problem. They blame the guru for the marriage breaking up. You know, just stay out of that stuff. The same with the GBC. You know, when the GBC gets involved in stuff they shouldn't get involved in, they get blamed for the outcome. Yeah? It's like, I was speaking with Prabhu a while ago. He's a temple president in Los Angeles. I think he's probably the longest standing temple president in ISKCON. More than 30 years he's been there. And I asked him what was his secret. He said, stay in your lane. Okay? So it means like whatever your duty is, you do that. Don't try and manage everyone else's stuff. Just do what you're meant to do. Yeah? Understand what your duty is and do that. It's the same with the Guru. The Guru's business is to guide the disciple in spiritual life. Yeah? To show them the path back to Godhead. And it's not just that, you know, like the thing is like this is such a limited concept in ISKCON what Guru means. My Diksha Guru. That's it. Yeah? And he's everything for me. But we see in the Bhagavatam, right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the first chapter, how Sutta Goswami is glorified because he's got the blessings of his gurus, plural. So there's Diksha Gurus, there's Siksha Gurus, there's Vatma Pradakshina Gurus, there's different types of gurus. And we need the blessings of all these personalities. We need the guidance of all these personalities to achieve the ultimate destination. And so we need to have a much better understanding of what Guru means in this society. And not just think, you know, everything is dependent upon the Diksha Guru. Because in one sense, the Diksha is just a formality. Oftentimes you'll find that the Diksha Guru also is the most prominent Siksha Guru, but it's not necessarily like that, have to be like that. Sometimes we see, you know, like in my case, I rarely see my Diksha Guru. You know, in terms of lectures, I mostly listen to Prabhupada's lectures. And in terms of guidance, you know, I take guidance from devotees like Burijan Prabhu, you know, Shivaram Swami. I find these personalities very inspiring in Krishna consciousness. So, you know, we definitely need to broaden our understanding. You know? And one thing you'll also see, because, you know, I've been through this myself. I was previously I was initiated by Bhavananda Prabhu. And when he fell down, because at that time there's several gurus fell down. There's Bhavananda, there's Rameshwar, there's Bhagawan. You know, who else was that time? Huh? Jaitirtha, Hamsadutta, Kirtanananda. Yeah. The whole lot of people had, but at that time there was 3 in particular that fell down practically at the same time. Yeah? And in the lives of many devotees, that created havoc. They practically actually many of them did give up their spiritual practice because the guru fell down. But so what, it's very unfortunate they fall down, but why should that affect us? Ultimately, why should how does it affect our relationship with Krishna? Oh, the relationship's gone now because they fell down? No. Every individual has an individual relationship with Krishna, which is nurtured by the Guru, which is connected by the Guru through the Guru Parampara. But even if the Guru falls down, we're still connected to the Guru Parampara. It's just like Dinabandhu once he gave really interesting, what I thought was a very interesting analogy. Say, for instance, you're in Delhi, right, at Sarai Kali Khan or somewhere like that, and you ask a policeman, how do I get to Vrindavan? He says, you just go straight down this road and you'll get there. Huh? You know Delhi at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sarai Kali Khan, that's where the big bus depot is. You just go straight down that road, that'll take you to Vrindavan. And then, okay, you drive off on your way, right? And then the policeman, he becomes drunk and he commits some crime and he gets arrested and put in jail. Does that mean the instruction is no longer relevant? You throw out the instruction because the policeman's a rascal? No, the instruction is still pertinent. Or it's just like, if I plug this into the wall and I go away and I do something different, does that mean that that's no longer connected to the powerhouse? The connection's been made.
That's clear, but the thing is...
No, but you've got to understand, the way the transcendental process works. It's not dependent on an individual. If the Guru falls down, so what? It's unfortunate, but so what? How does that change your connection with Krishna? We're all part and parcel of Krishna. The spiritual process, the whole idea of the parampara is to reconnect the living entity with Krishna, to rekindle that flame of attraction. So, Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, it doesn't really matter. Receive transcendental knowledge. Even there's a verse in the Madhya Lila 15:108 where Krishnadas Kaviraj is clearly explaining you do not need to get initiated to go back home to Godhead.
It's a lengthy purport.
Wonderful purport. Very wonderful purport.
Stressing that it is necessary. The point here is we have been preaching, you cannot approach Krishna directly. You have to go through servants, like that. You cannot approach Krishna.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to take Diksha. It doesn't mean that you have to take Diksha, but we find in Kali Yuga, because most people are very, very contaminated, that Diksha becomes necessary because they aren't able to affect their own spiritual evolution. If one has full faith in the holy name, that's enough to take you back to Godhead. But how many of us have full faith in the holy name? So therefore we find that Diksha is necessary. Right. But again, Prabhupada mentions it's just like Diksha is just like when you go to, you ever been in a university?
Yeah,
A university student? Yeah. So when you go to university, what's the first thing you do?
Put your bag.
No, you register. You register, you enroll. That's Diksha. The enrollment's not how you get education. Enrollment just puts you in the position where you can get educated. The real thing is the exchange of knowledge. So Prabhupada compares that to the Siksha. The Diksha is like the enrollment, and the real thing is the exchange of knowledge. So this is, there's Divya Gyanam.
See, I have the same understanding as you have, but I cannot counter the other arguments, like when Prabhupada was asked by his disciples, when you're not there, who should we take as the next Acharya? And Prabhupada was closing his eyes, started crying, said, my Guru was very special. Everything every day, Chakshudana Diloje Chandrajan, what Prabhu said, for every day obey my master. So then it seems to that, or you have to just institutionalize it just like we're doing. That's this Prabhupada and the other person just connecting you. But then that thing of this philosophy that eternally he will be your master. And Prabhupada, was crying for what he said at a certain time, but nobody can say he's my Guru.
Yeah, but Srila Prabhupada wasn't trying to institute a system of acharyas. He wanted all his disciples to become acharya-like. But at no point did he try to establish the next acharya. And also you'll find in the Gaudiya Math, this wasn't Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's intention either, was to establish the next acharya, although there was one personality who did push themselves forward as that acharya, and that created havoc. The point is that Srila Prabhupada, he is the founder acharya. This is a unique position that no one will ever have. He's the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And we have in the line subsequent gurus. But the point is, the guru is just another link in the parampara. The parampara is also a very, very important understanding, because Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasya. He's established parampara. The idea of the parampara is an unbroken chain or unbroken link from Krishna down to the living entity. And when you take Diksha, you become connected to that parampara. And this is how you go back to Godhead. But anyone who's a guru in that parampara should not think of themselves as being, great personality. They should just simply think of themselves as a servant of their guru. Just like we think of ourselves as a servant of our guru. And our guru thinks of himself as a servant of his guru, who thinks of himself as a servant of his guru, etc., all the way back to Krishna. Back to Lord Chaitanya in our case. We put too much emphasis on Diksha Guru in ISKCON, and it's a really dangerous thing. Because there is potential that ISKCON will fragment because of that. And to some extent that's happening. If you get these little camps where they're all just focused around their guru. And it's a very dangerous thing. If we can just focus on the teachings of the parampara, if we can focus on the teachings of our founder, and obviously serve, respect senior Vaishnavas, serve, respect our guru. But we have to keep the focus. We have to understand who's taking us back to Godhead.
Can knowledge alone protect a disciple?
Huh?
Can knowledge alone protect a disciple from problems or making offenses or he's not aware of or something like that?
Knowledge is definitely helpful. Knowledge is the beginning. Knowledge is the beginning. It's not the end. Knowledge helps you to realize how to conduct yourself in the spiritual practice. It's not the conclusion. It puts you in the right position. Like Lord Chaitanya, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shishakta Ekam Purusha Purana. He came to teach knowledge and renunciation. But it didn't end there.
And sometimes as a preacher also you have to try to understand how much should you be involved. If it's spiritual, even then how much should you guide and how much should you not guide? Because sometimes a father doesn't guide so that the child like the fan and the finger problem, like that example, so that the person will learn by experience. Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, just from experience you understand these things. Each person's individual. Contact, you have anything to add?
Of course.
Of course.
I always have something to.
That's why I'm asking it. I'm asking you that.
On what specifically?
Prabhu's line of question.
So many points.
Yeah.
Well, the essence of the point is that this Angara Varna tells the Pandavas, if you would have a priest with you, I would not dare to attack you because he will fully protect with his power, like tapasya, whatever, knowledge, whatever he has, and nobody can defeat. If you have a priest with you, you're protecting a priest, no Gandharva, no other being can defeat, even if you're a human. So I was trying to understand that point in the Mahabharata. Because this verse goes about Shukracharya should not have taken the position of the demons and the priest. I was thinking, how far is a guru responsible or powerful enough to protect his disciples? Now, imagine knowledge is one thing.
Well, knowledge is the main thing. It gives them transcendental. It's not just knowledge. It's not like you're reading an encyclopedia and talking about buildings or whatever. It's transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is power.
Yes, one thing is, we can see some one slokas is mentioned.
Sorry?
One slokas is quoted that what's the meaning of guru?
Yeah.
What's the meaning of guru? This guru is coming from gu and gru. So gu means darkness, ru means to enlighten you. So when it's not the knowledge is not there, it means that the darkness. So that we cannot act anything.
Yeah, you're in darkness. Yeah.
So the knowledge is the first given by the guru. What knowledge given by the guru? The spiritual knowledge. That can help you.
Contemporary?
Okay, there are different types of gurus, different type of priests and brahmana, purohit. Like we see, the verse speaks about Shukracharya. And one way he was protecting his followers was through the Mrityu Sanjeevani mantra. When they got killed, he will resurrect them. Right? So there are, of course, your question, your answer is legitimate. Through knowledge, the guru, especially a Vaishnava guru or a spiritual guru, equips the disciple. At the same time, if we talk about the world of brahmanas or purohitas, there are other forms. Like for instance, we have some connection with some brahmanas in Mercote, who, when people try to attack us through black magic and other forms, he protects us through mantras. So there are different forms of protection, but what you emphasized is, of course, in our general case, is the most important thing. The guru gives knowledge, like you said. The disciple comes to the guru, and the guru gives knowledge.
Yeah, but transcendental knowledge, that's
Yes.
not just,
Yes.
that's the real protection, because ultimately you can't protect the body, it's going to perish. But the self you protect with knowledge.
Again, the different brahmanas, according to their power, according to their background, according to their school, can even resuscitate the body. So, resurrect the body, not resuscitate, resurrect the body. So, but again, what you said is most relevant for us, for Bhakti Yogi in general.
I have an urgent question. I was also told that our guru parampara is mainly Shiksha guru.
In our line, yeah.
Yes, and sometimes devotees like say, oh, you have to take Diksha, you have to take Diksha, otherwise you don't get Krishna Prema. But what if one has the Shiksha guru and who's following? I mean, it's like also like you will also get Krishna Prema, or you will go to Krishna if he has following the Shiksha guru, or you must get Diksha. So, but
Yeah, but same point I was saying before, according to Prabhupada, the Diksha part's a formality. It's very helpful. No doubt it's very helpful. The real thing is the instruction. And that instruction may come from the Diksha Guru, or it may come from somebody else. Just like we see, like in some of our acharyas in Vrindavan, who was it? There was one, Sukhi Krishnadas, I think it was.
yeah,
Huh? Shamananda Pandit. Yeah. So he took Diksha from one Vaishnava, but then he got Siksha from one of the gopis.
Lokanath Swami was his Diksha guru? He was sweeping
Who was it? Hridoy Chaitanya, that's right, yeah, Hridoy Chaitanya was his Diksha guru. But he got Siksha elsewhere. And through that Siksha he was perfected. So, it doesn't really matter in one sense. It obviously should be a Vaishnava, but it's not necessary to take the Siksha from your Diksha. Of course, it's good to have an understanding, because we see that in that case there was a bit of a disturbance, because he didn't really understand, Hridoy Chaitanya didn't understand. But nonetheless, it's not like obligatory that the person who gives you Diksha is the person who also gives you Siksha. It can be somebody else. That's quite common in our line. Each is qualified to deliver transcendental knowledge. But ultimately, and this is a really important point, ultimately is they are acting as agents of Krishna, and ultimately Krishna is acting through them, because ultimately Krishna is the deliverer. Only Krishna can deliver us back to the spiritual world, but he can act through any agency he likes, and in particular he acts through the guru. He says, Kintu Prabhu ya priya eva tasya, because the guru is very dear to Krishna. And when I use the term guru, it means all types of gurus, Diksha gurus, Siksha gurus, whatever. It doesn't just mean the Diksha. This is I've seen this in ISKCON. I think this is damaging our society. is whenever they talk about Guru, younger devotees generally think this means the Diksha and only the Diksha. But so many people are acting in the capacity. It's like the local temple president. He often is guiding the devotees in the temple how to practice spiritual life. He's a Siksha Guru. Anyone who's guiding you in spiritual life is a Siksha Guru at one level or another. Sometimes the relationships are formalized, most of the time they're not. But still, someone who's giving you good knowledge on spiritual path should be respected like that. Because when they're respected, when you have the proper relationship, then that person will be more willing to give you knowledge by which you can understand the spiritual path. Don't get caught up in just one element of this very, very vast philosophy and culture. It's like, the Ritviks, they take one word, one statement of Prabhupada and base a whole philosophy, an erroneous philosophy, on this one statement. Okay, I think we should finish here. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sarvadvaita Bhaktivedanta ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna.